Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Stacy. So I talk about a lot of different things on this channel, including like family issues and anxiety. And I thought I would talk about one of the things that I really battled with as a younger woman, as a teenager, a young woman, a young mother. So a young married woman, very briefly, because I was pregnant when I got married. We were planning the wedding. We're worried I couldn't get pregnant because I'd never been pregnant in my life, which was planned. I had been on birth control, but we were very much worried because I had stopped taking birth control and my periods weren't regulating out. And we were worried about fertility. Yeah, we didn't have a problem because the second I put the deposit down on the wedding hall in my wedding dress, yep, pregnant. And when I was planning to get married, it was in the summer in a corset dress, and I would have been 7 months pregnant. And I'm only 5'2", so like my torso is only so tall, so the baby can only go out. There's nowhere to go up. I don't have a long torso, so I mean, thank goodness I had small babies, but that's a different issue. But one of the things that I really struggled with, and it horribly affected my relationship due to my husband's immaturity and his lack of understanding of what I was like, where I was coming from and motives. And I think we used to struggle predominantly and fight like hell about him going out after work and playing sports because he was very athletic. And I was home with the kids all day. I wasn't working. I was lonely. And then he'd get off work and I would want to see him, and he'd come home, shower, and leave for another 3 hours. And I would not be nice when he got home, because at that point I'd been home with the kids for 18 hours, haven't done a single thing I wanted. And I had help. My mother helped. She retired right when I had my son. So, I had help, but I wanted my husband. And, it became a force of contention. And I detest being alone. It is my biggest fear that I'm an only child. My parents were a little bit older. I lost some of my grandparents when I was quite young, and it really affected me. He didn't really understand that. He just thought it was a control thing because there were issues in his family life that he brought into the marriage that, where certain people manipulated others to get certain responses. And so that was where he thought it was coming from, when it was really all along, no, I just want to spend time with you, and I'm scared. And, now that he spends more time with me, I'm a lot nicer to him, and we get along a lot better, and we're able to communicate much better, so we're able to parent more effectively, and we don't fight nearly as often. I mean, we may have an argument between us maybe once every 2 months. It was not 2 days between major fights and me packing up and leaving, or him packing up and leaving. I mean, we never left for long, but it was like, I have to get out of here before, I lose my mind. It just, the frustration of, it was like banging my head into a wall. Oh, and I'm sure he felt the same way, and it wasn't until maybe about 3 years ago, when we really went through, my 2 prosecutions that I took to trial twice, and the stress of that, and his fear of me going to jail. And I mean, I was only facing a misdemeanor in 90 days, but that wasn't the point. The point was I was innocent. The point was that no crime had been committed, and if it had, I would not have been the one that committed it. I had nothing to do with it. I was not party to it. I found out after the fact. And it was never investigated. I mean, the officer took the stand and said, I don't know, I got the case. I never talked to anybody. And the jury, I remember looking at the jury like, and you're having to take a day off work for this. I'm sorry. I couldn't plead this. They have no evidence. Literally, they have no case. And a prosecutor greenlit that to go to trial. I mean, after I took it to trial the first time and they dismissed the charges, and then they recharged me with a different crime, because first they charged me with contributing, and then they straight up dropped those charges, and then they refiled with harboring. Well, harboring is an intentional crime to hide a child from the custodial parent. She has two custodial parents, her mother and her father. Her father dropped her off here because her mother was out of state and there was a family emergency with one of his parents. And she's an only child. She doesn't have siblings she could go to. So, I mean, this was not something that could not have easily been sorted out by the police had they actually spoke to someone in my household, or they couldn't speak to her away from her mother, and she had to do what her mother said. So it caused huge drama in my family, obviously, because how do you think that affected my relationship with my son? I couldn't speak to him. When you're going through a trial, when you're preparing for trial, everything has to be confidential. I mean, discovery goes back and forth because there's no hidden, they can't spring something on you at trial, that you have to be made aware of it. And they have to be made aware of it. But there were certain things that we did not have to disclose until right before trial. You know, some things you don't have to disclose until the actual discovery period is ending. And you're saying, no, I'm not taking a plea under any circumstances. I'm taking this to trial. You know, that time period. And the second time went a little bit faster because my attorney knew. I had a court-appointed attorneys. I had the two that worked out of that courthouse locally. They were both excellent. Both took the case to trial. Like I said, they dropped charges on the contributing, and then I took harboring to a jury, and they hung. And my attorney literally said, "Want to try it for a third time, or are you going to leave her alone now? Because we will be right back here." And the judge and the prosecutor, this speaks volumes. Neither the judge nor the prosecutor had ever had a hung jury. The judge looked at the prosecutor, and she's like, "I've never had a hung jury. I don't know what to do at this point. Do you have to refile? Are you intending to refile? Have you ever had a hung jury?" He's like, "I don't know. I haven't had a hung jury." He's like, "And I have to speak to my boss downtown, before I refile for a third time." And then my attorney's like, "No, you have to refile all new charges." He's like, he's like, "You have to go right back to the beginning, and it's going to go right back to discovery." He's like, "But we'll see you right back here in trial in 10 months if you want to drag this through the process again." Because she maintains her innocence, which I do to this day. I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't even in the county. And like I said, I didn't know until I got home from work. It wasn't like they called me and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Because my thought would have been like, I realized that, her mother's out of state and her dad's got to go because there's an emergency, but she really needs to go with her dad. It would have been my decision, my input. I wouldn't have, which is, I'm sure, why they didn't call me and ask for my opinion. Because my husband and my mother are both like, "Oh, sure, we'll do it" kind of people. Where I'm like, this might not end well for me, so I don't see a bright side but that's how I look at things versus how they look at things. And I'm not saying, like I said, it was the right thing to do to not, she really didn't have anywhere to go. I'm not saying they did the wrong thing, but I'm saying I had nothing to do with it. And the jury was allowed to ask questions in my case, because some judges don't allow it, some do. And they actually, I figured they were going to hang because they couldn't come to a verdict right away. Like, the trial ended and it's like 6 o'clock, 6:15, 6:30. They ordered pizza for us and the jury. Like, they ordered pizza for everybody. The prosecutors did, or they had the clerk of court order it, but basically we had food provided to us because the stenographer, the woman that does the typing for the court, does the official transcript, she brought pizza out to my husband and I and asked us if we wanted some glasses, like plastic cups for the drinking fountains. So they were, they were as nice as they could be while we were waiting for the jury to come back, because, I didn't think there was any chance that jury wanted to come back another day. And they came out twice and said, "We're deadlocked." And they read them, there's a certain instruction: "You're the best jury for the job, and if you can't do it, no one can. So go back in there and try to argue it out." And they said no. And when they polled the jury, it was 3 people thought I was innocent, 2 people were unsure, and 2 people thought I was guilty. And that, I think, was the reason they didn't. If it would have been 5-1 guilty, I think they would have tried to refile charges. I would have taken them right back to trial. but they could have tried. But I think that when they got that jury count, and the judge went back and talked to the jury. I don't know if the prosecutors can. That is, the prosecutors are usually allowed to. Defense attorneys, there are rules by state. Sometimes the defense attorneys can talk to them if the jurors want. Sometimes the defense attorneys can only talk to them if the jurors approach them. They can't approach the jurors. It just depends on the laws for that state and maybe even the district, depending on the size of the state or Commonwealth. And then I'm sure it's different in some of the, like in DC, which is a district, but not really a state. So, I mean, it's not a state, but you know what I mean? So there's different things that I don't even want to get into in there. But this has been a much longer video than I intended. But suffice it to say, I'm having really bad anxiety and I'm kind of reflecting on things. But I think trying to calm down and communicate, is upsetting as that can be, and as, you know, if you really love someone and you don't want to live in constant conflict with them, then you need to figure out a way to reach them. You know, and like my husband has said to me in the last 2 years, you're the only person that has ever been there for me 100% of the time and wanted nothing for yourself. That's true. I have. And he recognizes that looking back. But we have, you know, he's 50, his birthday's coming up, but he's going to be 55? 54. You know, he's going to be 54. And, you know, I'm 48. I mean, we're not young. And I've been with him since I was 17. So in 31 years, yeah, I mean, there's, you know, but we went through hell. Like I've said publicly, I've said this to him, coworkers that were younger, I would not go back and relive my teenage years, my 20s, my 30s, or even my early 40s. You couldn't pay me any amount of money, billions of dollars, to go back and live through the pain of my teen, late teen, early adulthood, early, you know, motherhood and married years into middle age. It was horrific. But I understand myself so much better, and I'm able to talk to my husband in a more clear manner and kind of explain things, but not at a level 10 of frustration, you know, more like at a level 2, like, why do I have to keep saying this over and over? But, you know, we work it out. We always have. And, you know, I think that, you know, he and I were meant to be together. You know, he is the one for me and always has been. So, you know, in that case, you find a way to make it work. Or you don't. Or you live in a miserable state, which wasn't what I wanted. I wanted a partner that would love me and be affectionate and be kind. And in exchange, he gets a lot more freedom from the clinginess because I'm less anxious. So, you know what I mean? It's benefited him enormously. As much as it's benefited me, it's benefited him, it's benefited our household, it's benefited the marriage, it's benefited the children. You know, really the only person who hasn't lived in the home since things got really much better is my oldest son, because he moved out during the first issue with the court proceedings, because it was a matter of either you can't talk to me or you can't talk to her. And if you're not talking to me, you can't live in the house, because I have to be able to talk about my case, and I'm not leaving. So you got about 3 seconds to make a choice. And he was like, well, I'm not going to stop talking to her. I'm like, well, then pack a bag, because you can't stay. Because I'm not going to have my freedom compromised by your lying girlfriend. And trust me, I was pissed. So, you know, he moved out, you know, and he has not moved back, because they're living together at my father-in-law's, and, you know, that's fine. She and I have resolved our issues. I will under no circumstances ever meet her mother. And I said, if she's at your wedding, I will not be. If she's at the birth of my grandchildren, I will not be. I will never be in a country mile of that woman. She has come over to my house and had her husband attack my almost blind 80-year-old mother. And the police refused to take a report. They refused to arrest him, but they charged me with no evidence. But him being on our property throwing a fit, they wouldn't charge. Come on now, somebody's got friends within the police department. That's the way that happens. But never, ever, ever, ever will I be around that woman. And I've made that clear to my son. And, you know, that's unfortunate. But, you know, he feels like he's made a choice of who he wants to be with, at least for now. They're not engaged. They're just together. And, you know, I've buried the hatchet with her, but I will bury a hatchet in her mother's back, metaphorically, if I see her. That's my husband laughing in the background.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I put the wrong place.
Shut up.
Just the Owen.
You can't.
She's gonna see the Owen.